I have been a security guard at Harlan County Medical Center for 11 years. I have seen a lot of things in those corridors. Grief that breaks people in half, joy that lifts them off the floor, anger that turns decent men ugly. I thought I had seen everything. I was wrong. What happened on the morning of November 14th changed the way I understand the word honor, and I have been trying to find the right words for it ever since. Her name was Nurse Delia Marsh. She came to our floor on a Tuesday in October, transferred from the VA affiliate across town after some kind of administrative shuffle nobody explained. She was young, late 20s, maybe 30, with close-cropped natural hair, steady brown eyes, and a way of moving through the ward that reminded me of someone who had learned to navigate small spaces under pressure. She kept her lanyard tucked into her breast pocket. She didn't talk much about herself. She worked her shift, facing. She spoke quietly to her patients, and when she left at the end of the night, she was so careful about it that I sometimes didn't notice she'd gone. Until the corridor felt different, a little less certain, somehow, I will be honest. I did not pay her much attention at first. Most of us didn't. The attending physicians on the surgical floor treated her the way they treated most of the floor nurses. Like furniture that occasionally handed them things. Dr. Eliam Attentings called her the new girl in front of patients for 3 weeks straight, even after he knew her name. She never corrected him. She just did her work. It was Dr. Harlan Croft who made it official. Croft was the chief of medicine. He'd been chief for 6 years, and he carried the title like it was a physical weight he enjoyed. He was not a cruel man in the way that requires effort. He was cruel the way some men are when they've never once been made to feel small. A casual, flexive contempt for anyone who couldn't push back. He had a donor event scheduled for the 15th, a black tie evening in the atrium meant to secure a new surgical wing, and he was on edge about every detail. That Tuesday morning he came onto the floor and found Nurse Marsh doing wound care on a post-op veteran in room 114. The door was open. Croft stopped in the hall, looked in and told her, loud enough for the orderly beside me to hear, that she was wasting a surgeon's resources on a man who was never going to walk again anyway. She looked up at him. Her face did not change. She said, "He's a veteran, Dr. Croft. He walked through things you can't imagine. He deserves thorough care." Croft's expression went flat in a way I recognized. That tone, measured, unrehearsed, with no plea in it, was not what he expected. He stepped into the room, took the chart from the foot of the bed, reviewed it for approximately 4 seconds, and set it back down. "This is overcautious nursing," he said. "This is the kind of thing that bloats our cost per patient numbers." He looked at the orderly standing near me. "Make a note." He left. The orderly and I exchanged a glance and said nothing. What happened the following morning, I believe, was decided in that room. Whether Croft felt challenged, or whether it was simply easier to reassign blame when the donor numbers came in short, I cannot say. What I know is that at 7:45 a.m. on the 14th, he called Nurse Marsh into his office. His assistant, a young man named Patterson, stood in the hallway and told me afterward what he heard through the door. Croft told her that her performance review had been flagged, that her manner with patients was insubordinate and irregular, and that her contract was being terminated effective immediately. He told her she could clean out her locker, and that security would walk her to the door. He used those words. Security would walk her to the door. Patterson was the one who came and got me. I was the security guard on duty. I want to be clear about what it felt like to walk behind her down that corridor. Delia Marsh carried a cardboard box, a small one, just her personal things, a photo of what looked like a mountain range, a small worn book, a stethoscope she'd apparently bought herself. She walked in a straight line. She did not look at the floor. She did not look at me. Her chin was level, her shoulders were set, and her pace was the same pace she used when she walked to a patient's room. Deliberate, unhurried, pace of someone who has somewhere to be and has decided not to run. I have escorted a lot of people out of buildings, have never felt as small doing it as I did that morning. We reached the main lobby. The front doors were glass, and through them, I could see the parking lot, beginning to fill with the morning shift. I held the door for her. She stepped through. She set the box on the low wall by the entrance, straightened the photo inside it, and stood there for a moment, looking at the lot. Back inside. I did not know what else to do. It was 40 minutes later when the first of them arrived. I was at the security desk just inside the lobby when a man in civilian clothes, jeans, a canvas jacket, maybe 40 years old, walked in through the front doors and asked the receptionist for Dr. Croft's office. His voice was calm. Before the receptionist could answer, 2 more men came through the doors behind him. Then 4 more. They were all ages. Some wore jackets with unit patches I didn't recognize. Some wore nothing to identify them at all. They stood in the lobby without agitation, without raised voices, without any of the theater I associate with confrontation. They simply filled the space and waited. I came around the desk. The man in the canvas jacket turned to me and said, politely, "We're here for Delia Marsh." He said it, the way you say the name of someone you haven't seen in a long time but have never stopped thinking about. I said, She's been discharged. She left." "We know," he said. "She's outside. We'd like her to come back in." Then more came through the doors. I am not given to exaggeration. I have thought carefully about this number and I will stand by it. By 8:55 that morning, there were 340 men in and around Harlan County Medical Center. Some were in the lobby, some were in the parking lot. Some stood in a line along the entrance drive as if they had rehearsed it. I do not believe they had. I believe it was simply what happened when that many people share a single instinct about how to be present, somewhere. I found out later how it had happened. Not a phone tree, not a text chain, or rather those things existed, but they had existed for years. A network. Veterans from 3 separate deployments, from a medical unit that had operated under conditions I will not pretend to fully understand. Word had moved through that network the night before, when someone in the VA affiliate heard about the transfer and the friction, and by the time Delia Marsh's termination was processed that morning, 340 men and women who knew her name, who knew what that name meant, had already begun to move. I went to find Patterson, who went to find Croft. Croft came down to the lobby in his white coat, with the expression of a man who has been interrupted from something more important. He stopped at the edge of the atrium and looked at the lobby full of people, and I watched him recalibrate. Watched the irritation press into something quieter and less certain. He said, "What is this?" He said it as a statement, not a question. I don't think he had a question ready. The man in the canvas jacket, I learned later, his name was Sergeant First Class Damon Reeves, retired. Deployments, Delia Marsh's patient on the second of them, stepped forward and said, "Dr. Croft, my name is Damon Reeves. I'd like to tell you what I know about Delia Marsh." Croft said, "I don't see how that's relevant too." "In the Konar Valley," Reeves said, and his voice was still calm, still unhurried. "In the spring 9 years ago, a forward surgical team took a mortar strike. The physician was down in the first 2 minutes. There were 18 casualties. Delia Marsh ran triage for 4 hours with no physician on site, no medevac available, no communication with command. She performed field surgical interventions under fire. She made decisions that are in a classified after-action report that I am going to ask to have delivered to your board of directors this afternoon. 18 men walked out of that valley because of her. 2 more walked out of it months later because of work she did that day. That is 16 lives." He paused. "She didn't tell you that. She doesn't tell anybody that. That's the kind of person she is." The lobby was very quiet. Did not move. I watched him, and I will tell you truthfully that he did not look angry. He looked like a man standing in a room that had suddenly become much larger than he expected, with no wall to put his back to. Reeves reached into the inside pocket of his canvas jacket and produced a folded document. He held it out to Patterson, who was standing nearest to him. "That's a copy of her commendation. The original is with her service record at the Department of the Army. Appreciate it if Dr. Croft reviewed it before he makes any further personnel decisions." Patterson took it with both hands. I walked to the front doors. Through the glass, I could see Delia Marsh still standing at the low wall where I'd left her. She had not moved, or rather she had, because the cardboard box was no longer on the wall. She was holding it under one arm, and she was looking at the parking lot, at the men standing in it in their quiet rows, and she was not crying, though I will admit that I, watching her from behind glass at 50 feet of distance, was closer to it than I had been since my mother's funeral. She looked like someone absorbing something large and choosing not to collapse under it. She looked like someone who had been standing alone for a long time and was only now allowing herself to know it. Reeves came to stand beside me, pushed the door open and held it, and he looked at me and gave a small nod that I understood to mean, "Go get her." I went back out. I stood next to her, and I said, "Nurse Marsh, I think they'd like you to come back inside." She looked at me. She looked at Reeves holding the door. She looked at the parking lot full of men who had gotten up that morning and driven from wherever they'd come from because her name had come across their phones the night before, and they had not hesitated. She said, "Okay." She walked in with her head up and her box under her arm, and every man in that lobby, every man who was standing, which was all of them, came to attention as she passed. Not snapping, not theatrical, the quiet, deliberate kind of attention that has no performance in it. Reeves walked beside her. I walked behind. And I will tell you that I stood up straighter in that corridor than I have since I was young, and still believed the world mostly rewarded decency. Croft was still standing at the edge of the atrium. He was holding the folded commendation. Patterson had given it back to him. Perhaps he had taken it. I did not see. He looked at Delia Marsh as she crossed the lobby toward him, and he did something I did not expect. He stepped aside, not dramatically, just to the side so she could pass. She stopped in front of him. She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "I'd like my badge back." He looked at Sakaminshin's hand. He looked at her. He reached into his coat pocket and held it out without a word. And she took it and clipped it back to her lanyard. And that was the whole of it. She was back on shift by 9:15. I watched her walk down the corridor toward room 114, toward the post-op veteran she'd been doing wound care on the morning before. Her pace the same as it had always been. Deliberate, unhurried pace of someone who has somewhere to be. Reeves sat in the lobby for another hour, then shook my hand and left. He did not ask for anything. He did not leave a card. He just went back to whatever his life was. The same way you do when a debt finally gets paid. I think about that morning a lot. About what it took for a woman to walk down a hallway, carrying everything she owned in a cardboard box and keep her chin level. About what it means that 340 people got in their cars that morning without being asked twice. About what a commendation in a coat pocket cannot tell you about a person, and what a quiet lobby full of standing men can. She is still on our floor. She still tucks her lanyard into her breast pocket. She still moves through the ward like someone who knows the value of not taking up more space than you need, not because she has been made small, but because she has never needed to announce herself to know who she is. I know now. We all do.